Thank you for joining me on the second part of week 8, medical and rehab case management. This is more social work type of information. So you may find this for some individuals a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's also important for you to understand abilities management and case management from a holistic perspective. So let's get started. Um, we had ended at environmental accommodations in the social milieu. We did talk earlier about the vulnerable client population. They can definitely benefit from various types of targeted interventions through your support in case management. So I'm not going to discuss who are the highly vulnerable client population, as that was discussed earlier in class. What are the interventions in general? It's basically about having that independent living, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs of feeling safe. Um, and there's different types of assisted living. It could be things like group homes, halfway homes, um, everything from residential nursing homes, treatment centers, structured daycares, recreational type of activities. Uh, it could be even things like Meals on Wheels, foster or kinship care, and OHIP. And when we look at things from the client's point of view uh, and help seeking behavior, starting the process with the doctor. You're also going to partner, as discussed earlier in class. It is a collaboration with insurance. You're going to be partnering very closely with HR. Digressing back to insurance, it could be WSIB, it could be a Manulife, a Sun Life insurance. Involuntary clients are those referred by others in authority. So that could be child and adult protective services. Um, some clients may be mandated to the ward or board of the estate. This is court ordered for those that don't have the capacity to make decisions on their own. The homeless, um, clients who refuse formalized care. They may visit the soup kitchens, mobile food, accept blankets. Um, one, receive health care from various types of medical clinics. Um, One example is Haven on the Queensway. I give to that one quite regularly. That's a really good organization as well. There's so many out there that are government, not for profit. So you can look that up on the internet. But I just wanted to give you an example. Clients who need life-term services experience a series of case managers over time. So we have to consider that clients are going to have to repeat their story over and over and over again, and that can create additional trauma and PTSD. So just be empathetic to that if you're encountering that. Other clients react positively and others negatively. Um, Keep in mind the higher rate of case managers that are turned over, the more difficult it is for that client. Understand more effort is required to establish trust and a relationship um, with this group of clients, particularly if they've seen multiple case managers and they may not have had a great experience with one of the case manager for various types of reasons, lack of communication or miscommunication. Um, Talking about role conflict, the case manager has two functions which can cause role conflict. Um, you have to understand the case manager is in a position of power, privilege, control. Um, they can determine if the client is eligible for various types of services. So they put that rubber stamp or they don't put the stamp on it, right? Um, and understanding they're the ones that determine the eligibility of the client. They don't want to duplicate services as well, so they're going to see what services the client currently has. Um, and understand the case manager does have a certain amount of authority, but also advocacy and empowering others and helping people to live the and encourage the client to live a life of autonomy, freedom, dignity within their community. Yes, provide services that also help support that. And there are multiple types of services. You know, things like education on vocation. Um, Goodwill used to have various types of soup kitchens, but in the back, the people who were making the soup were individuals that were being trained to be cooks or so understand part of the role is to find support mechanisms so the person has shelter, food, but also there are some vocation as well. Disability case managers ensure the appropriate rehabilitation if it's required for the um, employee. When we talk about disability case managers, I got you to look this up as part of your asynchronous work to look up what is the difference between a case manager and a disability manager or an abilities manager. You're really the main role of a disability case manager is to ensure the early, safe, respectful return to work for their employees in an expeditious manner. But each case is going to be very, very different. Each injury, each illness is unique, each individual is unique, each job that the person works is unique, each organization is unique. Um, your role as a disability case manager is to really be a diplomat, to be empathetic, to excel in communication skills, relationship building, as well as create that rehabilitation plan for that return to work that's respectful for people. So a lot of planning, a lot of coordination, a lot of evaluation, a lot of diplomacy again, a lot of looking at privacy, security. And in addition to that, it is a project. Think of it as a project as well. When we talk about contracting case management, respect for the client's own self-determination. This is essential. You can't force the hand unless, of course, the person does not have the ability to make decisions on their own. Um, Contracting has constraints, both from the type and degree of impairment, as well as any mandated parameters within the service or treatment that occurs. So, um, you know, in terms of if a doctor prescribes, a certain medication, uh, if there's a doctor prescribes surgery, there's going to be some constraints that are going to be beyond your control, but there are some support mechanisms for rehabilitation thereafter. When we look at, um, contracting case management again, you can't promise resources that you don't have. This is essential. And this is why it's so important for you to understand what is available in the first place. You also cannot promise resources that the client is not entitled to in the first place. Okay, so no false promises, no false hopes. I know sometimes people have the best interest at heart, but you really have to be truthful. It's hard giving that information that there are no resources or the person isn't eligible, there's not enough room, they don't meet all the check boxes, but you have to be honest with people. Um, you're very often faced with ethical dilemmas. You have a fiduciary responsibility to work in the best interest of that client. Um, and sometimes that does conflict with the client's right to self-determination. You have to balance the legal side with the client's rights. You also need to know policies and procedures such as WSIB, any type of insurance. You have to understand um, yes, what is the client entitled to? What resources are out there? But there could be additional constraints. So, for instance, if somebody is on WSIB, the company can't top things up. That's against WSIB. If it was a Sun Life insurance, then they would be entitled to potentially, depending on the policies and procedures, top up any type of benefits on their own. When we look at goal setting and reasonable goals, they have to be smart, specific, measurable, achievable. I have to think about it for a minute. Realistic, um, and time bound. And it has to be a mutually set goal. It can't just be you determining for them. This is part of self-determination for the client. You both have to match um, and meet in the middle for this desired goal. And a lot of inquiry and probing questions is required of you. You also have to look at functional abilities of forms that are filled out by the person's general practitioner, clinic, hospital, so on. When we talk about contracting constraints, case plans tend to be individualized, so it's very customized, as I said earlier. You're going to have to review the plans regularly. This could be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, bi-quarterly, annually. You want to see, is there progress? Is there not? Do you need to change some of your case management as well? It determines what is working, what's not working, where there needs to be room for improvement, what needs to be changed, not just for the individual plan, but maybe for your overall case management. Desired outcomes is accommodating up into the point of undue hardship, that early, safe, and respectful return to work. Maybe, vocational training, skill revamping, sending people out, or maybe having people come in, or it could be on the job training in another department. Normalization, improved quality of life. When we look at case management from a systems driven perspective, there are two basic types of case management models. There is system driven and consumer driven. And I think we're going to be addressing systems driven first. Yes, we are. It has its roots in structure functional theory as well as organizational and management theory. If you've taken organizational behavior, you probably touched a little bit on this already. Some psychology courses as well. It's concerned with maintaining agency or organizational integrity. It runs programs that have been predetermined, and it's based on predetermined clients' needs. What are their requirements, which is again going to be unique in nature, and are they eligible for it? And if they are eligible, it meets the needs, then the client has to conform to established procedures and routines. And it has a stake in maintaining its own integrity. Basically, it operates to meet the needs of funding. So, money, unfortunately, is a constraint, but also the professionals who staff that particular agency. Think of CAMH, right? There's certain constraints, money constraints, policy procedure constraints, ethical constraints, their own practice. If it is a psychologist, they have their own ethics that they're bound to. Sometimes all of these, policies, procedures, constraints, unfortunately, creates I guess an expense of meeting the client's own particular needs. And sometimes they may feel pigeonholed or they may feel out of control. When we look at four subtypes of consumer-driven case management, the single one-time billing, think about, the general practitioner, the medical doctor, right? That form for completion. A lot of doctors are filling out a lot of forms, and unfortunately, we're losing doctors because through OHIP anyway, there's enormous amounts of forms that they have to complete. Things like investigation, which is bureaucratic in nature, it's bureaucratic task, looking at delivery of various types of legitimate, concrete services, as well as being an advocate for case management. So this is comprehensive case management. And that kind of dovetails to the advocacy part, where you're advocating for structural change, obtaining resources while being a diplomat, while being bureaucratic, following the red tape, checking those boxes, but also being a diplomat and respectful that these things are in place. You may not agree with all of them, but they're in place for a reason. When we look at consumer driven case management, this model is based on critical theory as well as postmodern principles. This critical theory challenges the legitimacy of the system-driven models. It's coupled with empowerment theory, basically giving clients their voice, the rights to assert their own needs, to have that articulation of, this is what I need, but this is where I'm also not getting my needs met. So creating that space for that opportunity. The worker becomes an ally of the client, advocate for them as well. As I mentioned earlier, in some instances, you're going to provide skills training and vocational rehabilitation. This helps empower the client independence. So you might be sending somebody to the Humber College Health and Wellness Program, right, for 4 years, or it may be you know, maybe a complete 180 where they're going to be a plumber at Humber College, because we have a on Carrier Drive a plumbing type of service. So when we look at consumer-driven case management, this model is truly based on critical theory and postmodern principles. It's really looking at, again, the voice of the client, empowering people. Okay, that might have been a repeat, or maybe I went back. Declarative knowledge. Case managers must be knowledgeable about the client's primary condition, its causes, as well as treatment options. You have to be knowledgeable about the resources that are available to all stakeholders, and they change constantly based on funding. Some of them get amalgamated. When we look at declarative knowledge, case managers frequently use what's called eco maps. So I invite you to take a break for maybe 1 minute and look up what are eco maps. It's a visual representation of your client's own unique and personal environment. In that is families, social networks, and formal agencies. It may be agencies like CAMH. It could be other agencies like CCAC, and I get you to look that up as well as interdisciplinary professionals that are involved in the case and your client's care. When we look at declarative knowledge, again, case managers, you should be knowledgeable in biological, medical, anatomy, psychological, health and safety, social, special, the spiritual needs of, your client's care, your client's primary condition. Are their needs being met? And clients' needs may be normative, perceived even. They may think that they need this, but really they don't need CAMH. Maybe they need other types of interventions. They may say, I need prescription drugs. Well, maybe it's not prescription drugs. Maybe it's another opportunity for to get different types of care. It can be expressed needs or relative needs for the client. When we look at the needs itself, there are 9 common needs frequently found among this particular client population, this particular type. Need for resources. Again, you need to locate it, you need to network, you need to leverage your own interpersonal skills to look into, but also secure resources in a timely fashion. The need for skills. Case managers provide the skills training to maximize the client's independence, freedom, autonomy, learn a marketable skill, right? Um, it may also be related to their own personal care as well. Need for information. Case managers, you need to navigate the waters of a plethora of information and help clients understand their primary condition, the resources that they're available and entitled to, but also how to treat themselves and how to access those resources. Knowledge informs and empowers your client. Self-esteem needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can research that further if you've taken psychology courses, organizational behavior. You need to have a foundation set of, a place to stay, and then, food, shelter. The next stage is safety, your own personal safety, and then you can move on to various things like self-esteem and love and self-actualization. You also have to understand that there could be some flare-ups, managing those flare-ups. There could be, additional rehabilitation that's set up. Various types of cumulative stress, particularly in the light of these days. We got out of a major lockdown. There is a lot of negative news out there right now, a lot of really sad information out there. So understand this can affect your client. It can create PTSD, and it may mean that your client needs rehabilitation, hospitalization to stabilize your client's primary